spiritual reading this morning comes from a book by Mark Nepo called The One Life We're Given. Everyone's life journey eventually arrives at a precipice or fork in the road. At some point, we will come to the end of a path and no longer know our way. Hard as this is where the inner journey begins. When all that we've carried has served its purpose, and now we must burn our expectations to light the way. This is when we assume our full stature in order to see what's ahead. This is when the soul shows itself, if we listen.
The scripture reading this morning is Matthew 2, verses 13 to 23. They were warned in a dream. After the astrologers had left, the angel of God suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph with the command, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you otherwise. Herod is searching for the child to destroy him." Joseph got up, awakened Jesus and Mary, and they left that night for Egypt. They stayed there until the death of Herod, to fulfill what God had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my own." Herod became furious when he realized that the astrologers had outwitted him. He gave orders to kill all male children that were 2 years old or younger living in and around Bethlehem. The age of the children was based on the date Herod had learned from the astrologers. Then what was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice was heard in Ramah, sobbing and lamenting loudly. It was Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled, for there were no more. After Herod's death, the angel of God appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt with the command, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and set out for the land of Israel. Those who had designs on the life of the child are dead." Joseph got up, awakened Jesus and Mary, and they returned to the land of Israel. Joseph heard, however, that Archelaus had succeeded Herod as ruler of Judea, and Joseph was afraid to go back there. Instead, because of a warning received by Joseph in a dream, the family went to the region of Galilee. There they settled in a town called Nazareth. In this way, what was said through the prophets was fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene.
Would you pray with me? Sacred Presence, as we continue to ponder these birth narratives of Jesus, help us to find the wisdom embedded for each of us. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of each of our hearts, be filled with your light and your insight. Amen. So last week we talked about the Magi going home by another way, and we talked about the story of the Magi. And in the same way we talk about Joseph being warned in a dream to take Jesus and Mary and flee to Egypt, understand it as another story. But stories, again, have wisdom to impart. They have lessons for us to learn. And when we look deeper than something that is considered literal, there's so much more to be seen. You know, that story in particular of the Herod killing all the babies, the infanticide, there's no historical corroboration for. And the story altogether was something that was written probably 50 years after Jesus' death. So again, we ask why. We ask why, and we ask what does it say to us today? I think probably one of the main reasons that it was written was to show this conflict between Jesus and Rome, between Jesus and the powers that be from the time he was born. It's almost like a bookend to the end of his life. It says, you know, this is nothing new, the fact that the kings and the emperor and whoever are out to get him and eventually kill him. This started at the beginning. So I think that was one piece of the author's intent. If we move beyond that, we start to look at the story and what it holds for each of us. And we ask ourselves about the choices we make when we get to those proverbial forks in the road, like Mark Nepo talks about. This is one of those forks in the road for Joseph and Mary and Jesus. And Joseph has a weird dream. He's got this angel that comes to him in the middle of the night. How he knows it's not indigestion or something he ate, I question. But nevertheless, he wakes up in the middle of the night and decides at that moment that something must be done. There's no, I think I'll go talk to somebody about that, see what they have to say, see if there are any rumors going on. Maybe this was all just, my imagination. There's no talking it over with Mary. There's no, I just need to get back to sleep and I'll deal with this in the morning. It's no, we're getting up right now and we're leaving for Egypt. As Mark Nepo says, there comes a point in time where everything that's gone before this has served its purpose, and now you need to burn your expectations to light your way. What a line, really, to burn your expectations to light the way. I think of what Joseph's expectations had to have been. I mean, think about it. If you were just visited by 3 wise people from the East who brought you these amazing gifts, if you put yourself in that story, how are you feeling when you go to bed that night? I'm feeling pretty good. I'm kind of on a high, Hey, I'm proud of my boy, I'm proud of my wife, this is all turning out pretty good, I got a little bit of gold in my pocket. Maybe that whole angel coming to me in the first place in the dream to say, hey, Mary's pregnant and I should stick with her. Maybe that really was a good thing. Nowhere in the fine print was there anything about leaving your home, leaving your work, leaving your family, leaving your community, leaving your rabbi and your Jewish family, and moving to a foreign country to be safe. That's nowhere in anybody's set of expectations in this story. And yet here we are with whatever expectations he did have to raise his family, to have a fulfilling life, to have a meaningful job, to maybe just even survive in the face of oppression, but survive in the core unit of his community that he'd been in for a long time. All of those expectations up in flames. I give Joseph a lot of credit, actually. He did what Mark Nepo said we need to do. When we hit those forks in the road, we pull ourselves up to our full stature to see where we can go. And we look inside. We listen inside for that still small voice, for our souls to speak. What do you suppose, if you're in Joseph's position, what are you hearing that night? What's your soul giving you to move forward? What do you find inside? Do you find strength? Maybe you didn't know you had. What else?
Hope and resilience.
Resilience.
Parallels to your ancestors, basically like how Exodus happened to Moses.
Sure.
They're starting to think like, hey, we gotta get moving, we gotta go.
Right, so your Jewish heritage is corroborating, or is, as you said, paralleling what your life is like now, and having to leave a place that you know and go somewhere else.
Anything else, you have to remember back to last fast, but
Yeah, maybe he's thinking, I made it through some rough times before. Here's another one. Here we go. So yeah, Mike.
Maria Morales, the leader of the Spanish community, was telling people to go back
So today, we have the parallel of a leader in the Spanish community telling folks to go back to Mexico to be safe. And what gives them the strength to do that? That becomes the question. What is that inner voice that speaks to you? Now, I'm thinking Joseph had his faith. I'm thinking he was well indoctrinated in the need to be obedient to the divine. And so perhaps he didn't question as much as some of us may question. Maybe he was simply willing to say, this is what I need to do, and I need to do it now. And here we go. For which I give him a lot of credit. When I came to my seminary fork in the road, I said, oh, heck no, for about 8 years. I certainly did not have any sort of ingrained obedience in me that suggested that when God spoke, I should just go, no questions asked. In fact, especially when I was younger, I may still have a little bit of this. If somebody suggested to me that I had to do something, I was often apt to just do the opposite, just to prove that I had my independence and no one would have any control over me, right? So even when I did end up taking that fork in the road and going to seminary, when I capitulated, went to seminary, I had an exit clause as far as I was concerned. So I give Joseph a lot of credit for listening and acting. It's not easy. Can you think of a time where you've hit a fork in the road? And maybe it's one that you wanted. Maybe some forks in the road are good, right? Well, you're still choosing one thing over another. But when we hit those forks in the road or those slides down the chute and liner board, can you think of a time that happened and what got you through? What did you dig deep to find inside? Did you pull yourself up to your full stature? Or did you, I'm not sure, I didn't curl up in a ball at a few places in a fetal position and go hide away in a dark corner for a while when some of those happened to me. Julie? To walk away from a corporate job. To say, yeah, can't take that road anymore. And to head off on an uncertain path. I think that's the hardest part. But you don't know where that path is going to go. Okay, we're going to Egypt, but we have no idea what that's going to look like. So the Egypts in our lives. Our country came to a fork in the road about a year ago. And we've been going down a path ever since. Maybe a path that we wanted, didn't want, but here we are. And there are a lot of folks in our country who are afraid right now. There are a lot of folks who are angry right now. We don't always get to choose to go down that slide, but we do get to choose how we're going to respond when we get there. Will we pull ourselves up to our full stature? Will we seek what our souls have to offer us? Or will we simply act out of fear and out of anger and out of ego? We're reading a book for the women's group right now by Episcopal Bishop Mary Ann Buddy. The book is called How to Learn to Be Brave. And she talks in there about being asked to be part of a leadership team to sort of examine where the church is going. And as we all probably know, the church has been on decline for a lot of years now. And so she's with this group of people, and they're talking to folks in the, the people of the Episcopal Church and holding listening sessions and trying to understand the experience of people. And they're analyzing congregational data and they're looking at trends that show this continuing decline in the churches. And they're arguing amongst themselves as to the causes and as to who's to blame. And they're talking about who failed where and when. And the consultant that they hired to guide them through this process finally asked him to take a step back and said, it doesn't take a lot of energy or creativity to figure out what's wrong. It doesn't take a lot of energy or creativity to figure out what's wrong. But you're getting sucked into our culture of critique. My challenge to you is that every time you criticize something, I invite you to try and come up with a suggestion to make it better. Can you dig deep to figure out what's going to make it better? Or do you just want to go off in your anger and your frustration and your criticism? Or can you pull yourself up to your full stature and find ways to ground yourself in something that sustains you with positivity and with meaningfulness and with a sense of wholeheartedness as we try and go forward into whatever we go forward into life? Because I think that's crucial advice for any of us, whether we're in a workplace or whether it's with our family or whether it's with our neighbors or with our community or with our world. To ask ourselves how we're approaching this fork in the road, how we're approaching this situation where we've had to burn all of our expectations to light the way. How do we approach it and go forward? Do we get sucked into that culture of critique and start just criticizing everything? And then how does that help? So how do we find those small, even minuscule, tiny positive steps going forward, even if it just means being kind to the person next to you? So these forks in the road are, sometimes they're huge, sometimes they're small, sometimes they change the entire rest of your life, sometimes it's a communal fork, a country fork, sometimes it's a personal fork in the road. But the people who approach those forks with a stature of faith and strength and courage and positivity are the ones who bring light, are the ones who bring hope and are inspirations. So let me share just two stories. One is a very personal one. It's about a woman by the name of Lyra Halprin who talks about her mother. She said that her mother had been a classical concert pianist between the 1940s and the 1970s, when sexism was alive and well, oh wait a minute, it still is, sorry. But when it was even harder to be a female musician in a really difficult profession. And yet she hung in there and she built a robust career for herself. She said that even as she aged, her sparkling mother, as she put it, showed her how to age well. And even in her 80s, after arthritis had set in and it, took its toll on her hands and her body, she would still sit down every day and play those beautiful classical pieces. She said one day she was watching her mom and her mom was trying to figure out how to find the right hand fingering to be more comfortable. And she'd swear a little, and then try again. And, oh, that feels better. She's watching her mom, and her hands are redder and more swollen than usual. And she looked at her and she finally said, "Mom, doesn't it hurt when you play?" And her mother, over the top of her rhinestone glasses, looked at her and said, "What, you think it doesn't hurt if I don't play?" And she went back to play. What's her fork in the road? It's almost a fork she hits daily. Right? We have some of those. Do I just give up completely playing? Or do I do what I can do because I need to do it for me? I mean, what is it that her soul says to her inside to keep her going? I think it says passion. This is your passion. This is your gift. This is what fills your soul. This is what fills other people with joy. Another story about a man named Vedran Smilovic. And I may be completely mauling that name, but that's the best I can do. He lived in the ancient and storied city of Sarajevo. That beautiful city was in the middle of the Balkan War between Bosnia and Serbia in the 1990s. And when he lived there for three of those years, the city was in constant threat of violence. There were mortars and there were rockets that destroyed the city on a continual basis. No one got out, no one got in, except for maybe a few United Nations helicopters. And if people tried to flee, they were often killed by mortars. Smilovic was a cellist with the Sarajevo Philharmonic Orchestra. Every day, he put on his tux, he grabbed his folding chair and his cello, and he went out to the places in the city that had been bombed. And he played his music. He played in the middle of broken down buildings, destroyed buildings. He played in the midst of fear of sniper fire. He played at funerals. One time he played 22 days straight in a bomb crater in a marketplace in Bosnia, or in Sarajevo, where 22 people had been killed. He played for those 22 days the same piece to commemorate those 22 people. The people of Sarajevo would wait for him to show up. And every day he would go out and he would play his magnificent music to help them remember their beauty and to give them a hope. He had a fork in the road every day, too. Do I stop playing? Do I stay home and stay safe? Or do I go out where it's dangerous? Do I go out and play so that people can be uplifted? Because certainly all of his expectations of living in a beautiful city and playing his music with an orchestra and coming home to a wife and children in a safe place for his family to be, all of those expectations had to be burned to light the way. So they're all examples for us. From Joseph all the way to Vedran Smilovic. Examples of people who said, this is a rough path I'm going down right now, but I'm pulling myself up to my highest stature, and I am digging deep into my soul to find that which will get me through in a positive, helpful, meaningful way for myself and for others. Amen.